Hello, this is Richard Pearce from Finextra TV, and I'm joined today by Mitesh Soni, who's with Singularity University. Hi.
Hey, hello Richard, and thanks for having me on the show.
Well, good to have you on the show. We met each other when I was at Microsoft and you were at Finextra. You're now with Singularity University, and I was really interested in sort of hearing a little bit from your experience if you were working for innovation, applications, development, etc., in a large software company, and then this role that you've now got in innovation at Singularity University. So can you tell us a bit more about what Singularity University is and what you're doing there?
So Singularity University is a think tank based out of Silicon Valley, and it brings together bright minds that are looking at technological advances and how they can be applied to solve some of the world's largest pressing problems like climate change, and bringing in policy experts, technologists, and entrepreneurs to provide suitable solutions. And we're a London chapter, so we're a non-profit as well. So we like to engage the ecosystem to design solutions and to do that through conversations, through events, and then more formally to kind of bring people together to build companies.
Okay, so let's unpack that a little bit. Thanks, that's a great setup. I mean, essentially the reason I was interested is that we're sitting in this world of sustainable finance, and it's changing at a really fast pace, as you said, driven by sort of policy, regulators, banks, consumers. There's a lot of complexity in just the language, the new taxonomy from the EU, etc. And wrestling that into a deliverable, which, if it allows a company, a new or old, to actually execute on this new opportunity and risk, is pretty hard. So what's the kind of thing that you would do? Give me a sense of, one of these sprints. What would happen?
Yeah, let me give you an idea of an eco sprint. And an eco sprint combines agile working practices with rapid prototyping. And we see that in some of the older ways of working, you have a very sort of firm business analysis response to, what is the problem? How do you design a solution? Everything is on paper. But you quickly find out that paper solutions don't necessarily materialize well in practice. So then in comes the rapid prototyping approach, which is if you have an idea, turn it into something you can see and build a small solution and iterate on the solution rather than the theory. So what this does is it breaks down large theoretical discussions into practical, actionable steps. Okay. And so when you combine the two together, an eco sprint is something that Planet Home has created, and Planet Home is looking at how to address some of the biggest problems in the world on sustainability through creating rapid experiments with the community. Now, typically, as you mentioned, there are different approaches to this. One is the regulators' approach, which is to create, classification systems in the case of the EU taxonomy, and providing investors with a range of green and brown grading so that investors can reorientate their resources and capital, and borrowers can equally look at how they can become different shades of green and brown. But when you look at the consumer, you can become easily overwhelmed. Well, what can I do? What could you do to make a difference in the world? And then this is what actually creates inertia, because mass consumers in herd instinct believe they can't do anything. So the way to crack that is to bring diverse communities into a room. And the eco sprint is a collection of individuals using STEEP. So S for social, T for technological, E for economic, E for environmental, and P for political. So when you bring these different actors together, they all have a different lens and view on how the problem can be solved. So, in the first iteration, you'll have a lot of brainstorming, and you have a lot of ideas which will be checked and range checked by political actors as well as technological actors, social, economic. And so, one way of doing this is through the lean canvas, and the canvas tells you about how the solution will work in practice, where the revenue will come from, what are the problems, who the partners are, and how you can build a sustainable business. And it's a very practical way of mapping out concrete actions that an organization can take.
So where we at SustainableFinance.Live, obviously we're doing the workshops, and we're sort of similarly following that model, if you will, but we're doing it in a day. But why I thought was interesting here is that we clearly are doing that to bring people together, build a network and inform, as well as get some of these business model canvases, lean canvases. You guys can then pick this up almost, can't you, and go into what is it, a sort of, you could almost do a sort of 6-week process if a company wanted to build something and turn it into code and prototype it, could you? Correct me.
Yes, that's right. And in San Francisco, such an experiment was tried. So the first step of that was to actually have a workshop very similar to your SustainableLive workshops, where you have the range of different actors. And in that room, there was a lady who was growing algae in the oceans, and the algae is a sink for carbon dioxide, and it was a very elegant way of sucking carbon dioxide out of the ocean. And her interacting with a range of venture capitalists, technologists, and political actors meant that she was able to get momentum and drive the next steps to formulate a more scalable policy for taking her solution and taking it to the world effectively.
Right. So she went through the business process and then turned it into a technology platform that was underpinning what she needed to do and got the investment, etc. Right. Yeah. Fantastic. Well, look, I think you know, the key thing that we want to do here is to think about how do we bring some of these areas together. You mentioned Planet Home, and just the last thing I wanted to talk about was, you know, who are they? Because you mentioned it a little bit there, but they're quite interesting, aren't they? And we're hoping to sort of perhaps work a little bit with them. Tell us more about Planet Home and what they've done.
So Planet Home are primarily an events organization that brings awareness to some of the big climate issues that we're facing. And it's a B2C platform where the education comes from corporates, VCs, and the community to take individual action and collective action to solve some of these issues. So last year, they convened a conference with more than 10,000 people where consumers who have had very little interaction with the climate space can go into a village and see some of the solutions that are being produced by corporates and startups and start seeing how the world could look if we convened the right people to address some of these the big issues in the world.
And it's wrapped up in a sort of arts and culture sort of vibe as well, isn't it? Really. Right. So it's that consumer piece, and then what we're doing is probably bringing the business-to-business piece to those consumers through the process you've just described. Well, Mitesh, thanks so much for spending some time with us today and bringing that to light. Hopefully we'll do a few of these, and then we'll bring a bit more information back to the audience.
I look forward to it.
Thanks a lot.
Good to see you. You too.